Nancy Moran, huh?
Yes, good friend of mine.
Yeah, and Fat, good people.
Very good. Have they been on your show?
Nancy has. Yeah, we had her on the show probably 3 years ago, I think. It's been a while.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
In the studio with us today, John M., who is the author of the book Performance Matters, which we're going to talk about here on the show. He's a veteran performer and an award-winning singer-songwriter. He takes us deeper than ever before into the art and skills of performance. The book we're going to talk about is a roadmap that starts with your talent, your art, your music, your act, and ends deep in the heart and soul of your audience. A must-read for anyone who's ever considered trying to perform music or anything else live. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We met at the Summer NAMM show last July, and you actually came up to us and told us about this book that you had written. We tried to get you on the show earlier, but between COVID and every other circumstance that seemed to get in our way. But at least we've got you here now. Let's start with question number one, which is, why did you write this book?
I wrote the book because, as you mentioned, I'm a performer myself. I'm a kind of a performance holic. I love performing, but I also love going out and seeing people play live. Live music and live performance, whether I'm doing it or listening to it, is kind of where it's all at for me. Anybody can sound good on a record,
right? But
when you in the moment live is where, you separate the men from the boys, to use a very tired cliche. And I just, over the years, I saw one too many people make, and supposedly pro-established artists make mistakes that I thought anybody who's been playing for a month should know better than to do this. Things like getting mad at the sound guy, or getting lost in the middle of a song, or not tuning your instrument until you're already on stage and the audience is waiting, things like that. And I just thought, I saw one particularly disappointing performance one night by somebody who should have been much better. And I went home, I wrote out this list that I called the 10 Commandments of Live Performance. And, thou shalt know what thou art doing, and things like that, and be rehearsed and so forth. And when I got to the end of this list, I thought, my God, I could write a book on this. And so a few weeks later, I thought, by God, why don't I? So why not? So I did.
The things that you mentioned here are really simple to-dos.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of artists don't seem to understand that a lot of and especially some of the seasoned pros out there who have either gotten lackadaisical or don't care, or whatever the issue is.
Or maybe just nobody ever told them.
And there's a course correction that always needs to take place. And I'm one of those guys that believes it's never too soon, and it's absolutely never too late to do those course corrections too, right?
I agree completely. On both counts. It's, I think, and this is another thing that surprised me, there's a zillion books and videos and courses and everything else out there on how to write a hit song. And there's also a zillion books out there on how to play this or that instrument, or how to solo better, or how to do this or that. But there's very little on performance. There are a few schools that now are starting to have classes in it. But there's very little in terms of books or multimedia on just the art of performance. It seemed to me at the time when I started writing this to be largely overlooked. And I thought it's the central thing. I mean, obviously what comes first is the music and the talent, and which is why I always tell people what I don't speak to in this book is how to write a song or how to play your instrument. I figure or how to come up with the material. That's on you, the artist. But once you've got something, how do you deliver it in such a way that the audience engages and remembers it? Because we've all seen, as you know, the analogy I use is a mediocre song delivered with passion and energy and sincerity can hold an audience spellbound, can bring them to their feet. And a great song delivered lackluster or, without feeling or, not properly played or whatever can have them yawning and in the worst cases leaving. And I thought there's just this needs to be addressed. So I addressed it.
I read a quote from Gene Simmons from Kiss who said that, and I'm paraphrasing, but he always knew that when they went on stage to perform, they were going to be the act to beat. He said it didn't matter if it was Yo-Yo Ma who was on stage, who's a much better musician, Gene said, than I'll ever be. But we went in with the mindset and the attitude that we're just going to rock everybody's world. And that's a lot of it, right?
That is a lot of it. And one of my personal favorite bands, The Who, had a very similar outlook. Pete Townsend famously said in the movie The Kids Are All Right, he said it doesn't matter how good or bad someone is. You do something big and 1,000 geezers go
Yeah, right.
And I think it does matter how good or bad you are, but he had a point, and so did Gene Simmons. You have to do something memorable. And it doesn't have to be wild theatrics like The Who or Kiss. It could, in her own way, Joan Baez, who was not nearly so theatric, but she had a kind of a riveting persona, stage presence, and a riveting delivery, and Harry Chapin likewise, and so it doesn't have to be a lot of dry ice and hydraulic risers and all that. You can incorporate those things if that's appropriate to what you do. But one way or another, whether it's the lyrics or whether it's your appearance or your persona or your lightning speed on your instrument or what, there has to be something that is memorable that the audience takes away with them. Sometimes it's just the way it makes you feel. But there has to be something like that. Otherwise, they just sit there and go, well, that was nice. And
next.
Next, exactly, right.
What are some of those live aspects of the performance that are most commonly overlooked by the artist?
Well, the theme that I keep coming back to in the book is being prepared. There's an awful lot of what song should we do next? Again, I've seen internationally famous acts standing around on stage. Well, what do you want to do next? You want to do this one? You want to do that one? And it's time wasters, and it's you have to keep things moving.
Thank you.
So being prepared, and the importance, I think another largely overlooked thing is the importance of patter, but not just having patter, doing it right. The patter is just as important as the music, and it needs to be rehearsed and perfected and worked out the same way the music does. You wouldn't go on stage with a song that you just learned how to play last night and could barely find your way through it. And neither should you do that with your patter. I assume most of your viewers are hip enough to know that when I refer to patter, I refer to talking between songs.
The conversation that goes on in between those songs, and I've brought that up more than once, is that you need to rehearse that to a certain extent. You don't have to be fine-tuned so much that it's the same, I don't want to say diatribe, the same dialogue, but you really need to be getting up there, not doing a lot of ums and ahs, and be engaging with the audience.
And tell them something, I think a tricky line to balance with patter is, on the one hand, telling the audience something they don't already know, but at the same time, don't explain the song to them, because a well-written song should explain itself. It should all be there. There's, we've all seen people who get up there and they go, well, this is a song I wrote about this girl I knew, and, she really kind of disappointed me, so I didn't like that, so I wrote this song. It's about her. So what? What have they told you? When you play the song, they're going to know it's about somebody you were involved with, What goes beyond that? And I think one key to engaging people, I incorporate this. I learned this from teachers. It's a teaching technique, but it works in performance too, is asking questions. Have you ever loved somebody so much that you just, you went to sleep at night thinking about them and you woke up in the morning thinking about them too? Everybody's thinking, well, yeah, but it's the audience doesn't have to actually answer you, but you're putting questions like that out.
It's thought provoking.
Yes, exactly. It's thought provoking. It makes them respond in their heads, if nothing else, and it piques their interest. And
it will cause them to listen to the lyrical content of the song that much more.
One of the best compliments I ever got was just not very long ago. I played here in Nashville at the A-Loft, which is just a little hotel bar in downtown Nashville. And a guy came over when I was done. He came up to me he'd been sitting at the bar drinking, and he'd been pretty much ignoring everybody else. But he came up to me and he said, I heard you talking up there, and the stuff you were saying kind of made me want to listen to your songs, and they're really cool songs. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Mission accomplished.
Yeah. So, and there are, you mentioned it doesn't have to be scripted word for word, but at the same time, you have to kind of know what you're saying. And there's arguments for both. As in the book, I should point out that before we get too deep into this, that it isn't just me talking in the book. It isn't I, me, mine, myself, and I. There are other people like Freebo and David Wilcox and Ronnie Cox and Alex Del Zoppo, who was the founding member of Sweetwater, who was the first band to perform at Woodstock. And, a bunch of people who've really many of them have had a lot more experience than I have and have played much bigger stages and had much more varied careers than I have. And they talk about some of this stuff. This is from the book. Sweetwater on rehearsing patter. Alex, Sweetwater, the two founding members of Sweetwater, Alex Del Zoppo and Freddie de Cordova. And so Alex is speaking first, and he says, every little thing, the wink of an eye, the seemingly casual or spontaneous banter between him and the band, all of it was all worked out and rehearsed and always the same. It made me want to commit suicide because I felt like I might as well be in a factory stamping out hinges or something. It was exactly the same thing over and over again. And then Freddie stepped in and said, yeah, I worked for a while with Yanni, and it was the same thing. We'd have these month-long rehearsals, and everything, the patter and the whole show would be planned out. We'd have these teleprompters on stage with all the supposedly spontaneous dialogue all written out. Part of the reason he did that was so they could film it, so there would be no change from one show to the next. But for example, in the middle of a solo, a person would play a couple of bars of Mary Had a Little Lamb in the middle of the solo. And that sort of thing is usually supposed to be funny or spontaneous. And every time he would look at the person and he'd smile and he'd point his finger and like he was going to say, oh, that was cute. But the whole thing was all worked out and rehearsed, and it was the same every show. But Yanni fans were into it, so it worked for him. And he said, we never did that in Sweetwater. And then there's other people in the book who emphasize the importance of being spontaneous, which is more the direction I lead in, but you still need to, I know I'm kind of going on here, but even if you're going to be spontaneous, you should at least have a rough idea of what you're going to say. The exact wording might be different from one performance to another, but if you know that you're going to say something about your girlfriend or your mother or an accident you had as a child or whatever, you know you're going to talk about that, and you have a few key words and maybe one or two key sentences, and you can kind of improvise around that. But you should have some basic idea of what you're going to say to make it interesting, without, as I said before, telling the audience something they already know or something they don't care about.
In the studio with us today, the veteran performer and award-winning singer-songwriter and author John M. of the book Performance Matters.
Hey, this is Matt Lutz from Music Benefactors. Check out my episode on the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena. And believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Talking about rehearsals, and that's something that a lot of people confuse with, hey, let's just get together and jam and see what happens.
Exactly. There's three. There's rehearsal, and there's jamming, as you say, and there's practicing. And they're 3 entirely different things. Practicing is what you do when you're trying to work on mastering your own instrumental skills or your own vocal skills. There's vocal practicing. You can practice just about anything, but it's sharpening your skills, and it's usually something you do in private. It very often involves scales or playing certain songs that you're having difficulty with or whatever. Rehearsing is rehearsing an actual show, an actual performance. It's like practicing, but you already know what you're supposed to be doing, and hopefully, if you do it right, the rest of the band members know. They've already done their homework. This is very important. And so in a good rehearsal, everybody comes to a rehearsal already knowing the songs and knowing how to play them. So it's not about learning the songs. You might work out some special arrangement. If you're doing a cover song, for example, and you want to extend a solo or do a different solo, or you want to play a different rhythm in the bridge or something, that kind of thing can be worked out in rehearsals. But basically knowing how to play the song should already be there. And rehearsals should also include patter, which we were just talking about, and theatrics. And
choreography.
All of it, and choreography,
yep,
which is part of theatrics. All of these things need to be part of rehearsal. And then jamming is just getting together and having fun, and just playing and seeing what happens. And all 3 are perfectly valid exercises, and they're all important. But rehearsing is specifically working out, we're going to do this song, and then we're going to make this announcement, and then we're going to do this next song, and this is where, the girl juggler walks across the stage, and this, whatever, all these little things, and technical considerations, lighting, and how many microphones you use, and all that kind of thing, all should be worked out in rehearsal.
But at the same time, you don't want it to look so over-rehearsed that it's almost contrived.
Exactly right.
You don't want it to be too much of a dance. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. And that's why a lot of people, that's what Alex and Freddie were complaining about, that it was so word for word. And for some people, if you ever follow a particular artist or a band like the Deadheads used to do back in the day, and you follow them around on tour and you see them half a dozen times. If they're doing everything exactly the same way every time, you start noticing it. A lot of times artists and bands are counting on the fact that, or the notion that an audience, that particular audience in a different town, is seeing them for the first time.
Right.
And that can be an advantage, but you can't always count on that 100%. So yeah, spontaneity is absolutely important, and that's why I favor, sometimes changing up the set list. You don't have to necessarily use the same set list for every single show, but it might be a good idea to use the same opening song and the same closing song if they work particularly well. Have a closing song that leaves them on their feet, clapping their hands. Maybe have an opening song that's an attention grabber that's easy to play when you first walk on stage. There's certain things like that. I once ran into, here's a little anecdote for you. I ran into Harry Chapin backstage at a solo show that he was about to do. We talked a little bit, and I asked him if he used a set list or if he had everything planned out, and he said, I know that there's about 4 or 5 songs that I have to do that my audience expects out of a show. And those are just, the staple songs. So he said, I know that I'm going to have to include those. And I space them out over the course of 90 minutes. And then in between, I just kind of wing it and play what I feel like. But every so often, okay, it's time to do another one of these required songs. And I said, well, what are the chances that you're going to do Mr. Tanner tonight, which is one of my favorite songs of his? And he said, well, I could do it, but I don't have anybody here to sing background vocals on it. Would you like to sing those tonight? And,
oh, my gosh.
And I said, let me think about it. Yes. And we went over it real quick in the green room there backstage. And he said, okay. He said, have a seat in the front row and when the time comes, I'll have somebody bring out a microphone for you, and I'll call you up, and we'll do it. And I said, okay. This was at the Santa Cruz Civic Auditorium.
Wow.
And it was the first time I'd ever done anything on stage in front of that many people.
Yeah.
And I went up and sang it with him, and it was a wonderful experience. But I guess the point of that is that there was spontaneity in what he did, and in a lot of his patter and so forth. But there were also those staple songs that he included, and there were certain. This was a benefit show, so there were certain things in his patter that he knew he had to mention, and he did. And he was a pro,
I would think any artist that has that type of legacy, that type of history, they're expected to perform a certain catalog of material. If they don't, and I've been to those shows where, hey, play whatever, fill in the blank, and they don't do it, it's a little disheartening.
It is. In my opinion, it's a little bit selfish on the part of the artist. I understand.
It's what got them there to the dance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what Alan O'Day says in the book. Alan O'Day wrote the one super hit that he had that he recorded himself was Undercover Angel, way back in the day in the 60s. Undercover Angel. He wrote a bunch of songs for other artists, the Righteous Brothers and Helen Reddy and a bunch of other people. But I actually co-wrote a song with him that was on his very last album, a song called Keziah's Children. But I interviewed him at one point for a project I was doing, and I asked him that exact thing. I said, do you ever get tired of doing Undercover Angel or any of these other staples, successes of yours? And he looked at me astonished. He said, are you kidding? He said, I owe my whole career to that song. How could I ever get tired of it? He said, I know that audiences love it. I know that audiences are waiting for me to do that. And seeing them react and hearing their reaction and getting that energy back from them when I do the first few bars of the song and yeah, this is what we came for. That is so gratifying. He said, I don't understand how anybody could get tired of that. Now, that was Alan O'Day. And, of course, there are some people who get tired of playing the same songs over and over and over again. And it is understandable, but that fatigue is, in that moment, they're playing more for themselves, I think, than they are for the audience. And the whole point of performance and the whole point of entertainment is that you are there for your audience.
You're entertaining them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's something to always remember.
And without the audience, you wouldn't be able to do any of it.
Yeah.
So, it's if nothing else, it's a simple way to say thank you. Just, give them let them know that you appreciate the fact that they came and you know what they came to hear and you're willing to give it to them.
And they're going to leave at the end of the night going, wow, that was great. I got to hear everything I always thought I was going to listen to.
Yep.
Let's talk about stage fright for a second. And I know that some artists get it, some artists don't. Some artists get it who've been doing this for years and they still get real nervous and queasy. And so what is that stage fright and is there a cure for it?
I think there is. It's what is stage fright? I'm glad you framed it that way. It's certainly not fear of the stage, and I don't believe it's even fear of the audience, although that kind of enters into it. It's fear of the unknown. It's fear of failure up to a point, but it's doing something that you maybe haven't done before. But even if you have done it, as you say, many famous people, Elvis notoriously suffered from stage fright, and he played some of the biggest audiences in the world and worldwide televised, and he was scared to death when he first went on stage. Most artists, including him, get over it once they get into the performance. It's those first few moments that are the most terrifying when you first walk out on stage and you're not sure how they're going to react. Part of it, I believe, is a fear of something that's unlikely. What if they don't like me? What if they turn on me? Probably the single most important thing for any artist, any new artist, and any artist who suffers from stage fright to remember is that the audience wants to like you. They wouldn't be there, They
wouldn't have spent that money to sit in that seat.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if they don't know you. And of course, if they do know you, then it's even more so. But even if an audience doesn't know you, if you're just, you're on your way up and you're playing in some bar and people just happen to be there, they still went to that bar. And they went there knowing there was entertainment. And they're hoping and expecting that it's going to be something they like. So if you just don't give them a reason not to like you, and you're already a step ahead, take that positive energy that is there. They're there. They're looking forward to you coming out and doing something. They're hoping they're going to like it. All you have to do is take that energy that's already, the red carpet is already laid out for you,
right,
and just walk out on stage with confidence. And one trick that I speak to in the book that a lot of people have done over the years, know your first move when you first walk out on stage. Know maybe your first line. One of the first decisions is, do you walk out and dive right into the first song, or do you say something first? Either way is fine. But if you're going to dive into your first song, know what it is, and if you're playing with a band, have somebody counting it out as you walk on stage, so you just, you have confidence and you're ready, and you dive into it. And if you're going to say something, know what you're going to say, know what your first line is. One of the most famous examples of this is Johnny Cash, the Man in Black, who for years and years, and he was another one a very famous person who suffered with stage fright. He would go out on stage and he would walk up to the microphone and he would say, "Hello, I'm Johnny Cash." And the audience would roar. And then, the drummer would count off the song and they'd be ba-boom, 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 and off they'd go. And then they were off and running. Then he didn't have stage fright anymore. Once they were into it and the audience was with him.
Right.
I toured for a while with Edgar Winter. I didn't perform in his band, but I was part of his stage crew. So night after night, I saw him do his shows. And occasionally he changed up the set list and did different things, but he always started out the same way. He would walk across the stage to the band would already be there. He would walk across the stage to the microphone and he would grab it and he would go, "All right, people!" And the audience would cheer, and then he would sit down at his keyboard and play a song. But he always started with that. He always knew his first move.
Yeah.
Some people don't have to do that. I did it for a while. I don't always do it anymore. For a while, I used to go out there and I used to say, "Hello, my name's John M. and these are my songs. I hope you like them." And then I'd go into a song. But sometimes that's not necessary. But again, getting back to know that they're there, that they want to like you. I have a brief anecdote from how I learned that lesson when I was starting out. I was in probably my early 20s, and I was just starting to play colleges around the Northeast. A friend of mine who was a student at this one school got me booked there to do a concert. I was expecting it to just be like a little college pub thing where, people would be sitting around and I'd play a few songs. But she had taken it on herself without any direction from me to put all these posters and flyers and stuff up all over the school. And the amazing, incredible John Mollenhauer that's my full name, Mollenhauer. I used to go by that back then. He's going to play, and you can't miss this. It's a must-see show, blah, blah, blah. And she put all this flowery stuff out there that made me sound much better and bigger than I was. And then I was there, and she came out and introduced me, and here he is, please make welcome the one, the only John Mollenhauer. And I came out, and the place roared, and it took me completely by surprise because I wasn't expecting it. I thought, none of these people know me. Why are they so excited? Yeah. Why are they? I didn't say any of that, thank God.
Right.
But
you're thinking it at the moment.
But I was thinking it, and it completely surprised me because I thought they were just going to be, okay, what do you got? But they weren't like that at all. They were on the edge of their seat before I ever played the first note. And sometimes you get a magical audience like that where everything you say, it can be the most benign thing. It's pretty cold out tonight, isn't it? And everybody laughs. It was one of those kind of nights. But it happened because she had built up their expectation, and she had planted the seeds in their head that this guy is somebody worth seeing, and we're going to go there. And they went there thinking we're going to like this. And they did. And I carried that with me to this day, that experience, just knowing that they want to like you. If you get nothing else out of this, go into your next show, if you're a performer, telling yourself that they want to like what I do. Not all of them will, but enough of them will that it'll give you something you can run with.
Let's go in the opposite direction for a second, because you talk about hecklers in your book. And it happens.
It does
more
happen.
So with comedians, I think, and actors than it does with singer-songwriters,
Absolutely.
musicians.
Some comedians almost ask for it. But yes, it does happen. And there are different ways to deal with it. I've been pretty lucky. It has only happened on rare occasions with me. And when it has happened, always very brief moments, or almost always. I'll tell you the one thing I advise not doing, and then I'll tell you about when I did it. What you want to avoid doing is getting mad at your audience. It's kind of like a child acting out. Once they're trying to get a rise out of you, right? They're trying to get you to go, stop that. Right. And as soon as you do that, they've won. They know, even if they get punished for it later, they accomplished what they set out to do. So you don't want to get mad at your audience for two reasons. One, it lets the heckler win, but also it ruins the show for everybody else who's not heckling you. You have to keep yourself mindful that, whoever the heckler is, or hecklers, if there's more than one, most of the time it's just one or two people who are just being obnoxious, and you have to find a way to deal with them without alienating everybody else. Sometimes you can make light of it. Sometimes you can make a joke of it. Sometimes you can just ignore them. Sometimes ignoring them actually works because the people around them will quiet them, after a moment or two. But sometimes you can respond. I had somebody yell out to me once. I went out on a stage, an outdoor thing, big festival thing. I played a couple of songs, and somebody yelled out, "You look like Meatloaf." I said, "Thank you. I like Meatloaf. I'll take that as a compliment." And then I just went on, and that was the end of that. So I did acknowledge him, but I didn't say, "Oh, screw you,"
Yeah. You want to make them your friends, not your enemies. Yeah.
Exactly. You want to make them your friends, not your enemies. Now, the one time I did get serious with an audience, and the worst example of artists and audience being hostile towards each other that I've ever experienced, was when I was starting out. I was in this 3-piece rock and roll band, and we got misbooked into this place in somewhere in New York. We were young, white, hard rock guys into people like Cream and The Who and Zeppelin and people like that. And that was the kind of material we were doing. And we got booked into this predominantly black club, and they were into something different than what we were offering. They wanted something other than what we had. And they kept yelling out requests for things that we couldn't do. And not being very experienced at the time, because I was just kind of starting out, we kind of ignored it. And they got more and more hostile. They started booing and jeering and so forth. And we took a break. And then we went back on stage, and the same thing started up again. So that's when I got serious, and I hopefully I would have found a better way to deal with it today. But what I said was, it was clearly a mistake for us to come here tonight, and I apologize to you for that. But nonetheless, we are here, and this is what we do. We were booked to come here and do what we do, and we're doing it. And we're going to stay here and do it until we're done. So you have some choices. You can leave and go to some other club up the street where you're more likely to hear what you want. And the guy behind the bar is going, "Oh my God, he's not saying this." And I said, or you can stay here and you can be assholes and throw ice cubes at us. Or you can try giving the music we're playing a chance. You never know. Give it a shot, or leave, or do whatever you want to do. But regardless, we're here and this is what we're going to do. And then we went back into our set. And it still kind of amazes me to this day, but it worked. And we did turn them around for about the next half hour to an hour. And after that, people did start leaving. By that time of the night, they probably would have left anyway. So I got away with it. And I look back on it as, wow, man, it could have gone a lot worse than it did. I could have made somebody angry enough to do something still worse. But yeah, such things can happen.
It happens.
But more, getting back to the initial question, what's the right way to deal with hecklers? If you talk to them, if you engage them, but not in a hostile, adversarial way, you're more likely, it's more likely to go someplace you want it to.
In the studio with us, we have John M., who is the author of the book Performance Matters.
Hi, this is Steve Jones, co-founder of Beat Chain, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
What does it take to succeed in country music? Hi, this is Candy O'Terry, your host for Country Music Success Stories.
And this is JC Don Valeris, your Music City mentor. Our Nashville-based podcast takes you into the homes and onto the back porches of country music icons.
And the stories they tell us just might inspire you to make your country music success story come true.
Check out Country Music Success Stories on your favorite podcast platform.
And subscribe today.
When you have a Korg synth at your fingertips, the possibilities are endless. Be it digital, analog modeling, altered FM, wave sequencing, or the multi-engine synth, Korg gives you easy access to a variety of features to help you get the perfect sounds quickly. Whether you're a professional musician or just starting out, Korg truly has a synthesizer to help you express yourself. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products to create new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Let's talk a little bit about, you teach courses, right? Workshops?
I have taught
private teaching, what?
Yes. I am still an active singer-songwriter performer, so that is the lion's share of what I do. But I do have this book, and I have taught some seminars and some workshops, and I'm actually looking to do more of that. I haven't done any lately since I moved back here to Nashville, which was last year, partly because there's been this thing called COVID. Perhaps some of you have heard of it. And that shut everything down. And COVID came for me at the worst possible time. I had just released the book, and I had just started doing I was traveling around the country doing a bunch of seminars and workshops at conferences like NAMM and at a lot of colleges and music schools, and lecturing on the book and having people ask me questions and having people perform in the workshop, and we'd all critique each other and so forth. And it was going very well, and I was getting some nice wind in my sails, and then COVID came along, and everything shut down. Colleges and schools were closing their doors for 6 months, and they were doing everything online, on Zoom. And there was some talk of me doing a little of that on Zoom, but I find it's really difficult to get the true performance, for me to be able to critique performances, and for an artist to be able to gauge how they're going over with an audience in a Zoom or an online context. Now, I am planning on re-releasing the book. I mean, the book is available now, but I'm planning on very shortly doing an updated version of it with a chapter on live streaming performances and a couple of other little tidbits that I'm going to throw in that weren't in the original. But yes, I have taught workshops and seminars. I am open to doing that now. I can do it one-on-one with individual performers, or I can do it in a workshop setting. I've been looking for places to set that up. And if anybody out there is interested in working with me on that, or getting critiques from me, or working with me in that,
how do they find you?
Through my website, which is johnm.com. It couldn't be simpler. And there's email links all over my website. You can email me and ask me questions. There is also, the book is clearly right on the home page. If you scroll down on the home page of my website, there is a section right there that features the book, tells you a little bit about it. There's a picture of it, and there's a little thing you can click on that says buy this book. And there's also a page on the book where it tells you a little bit more in a little more detail. And again, there's a buy this book link.
Because it's 20 good chapters, some odd good chapters of information here.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah. So I am working now on setting up some workshops and some seminars. I hope to be able to do that in the early spring. Sadly, I don't have a specific date or a place that I can announce right now, but I will keep you posted on that.
Yeah, please do. That'd be good.
And people can, as I say, visit my workshop, my website, and inquire about that. And obviously that the more interest I get, the easier it'll be to put it together. So
thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. It's been fun talking to you.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.